Hello and welcome to Folktales and Fantasy, the podcast where we talk about all things fantasy and more. I am Cameron Michaels and welcome back. We're here doing another one. Hopefully, if you listened to the last one, we talked about characters, and today we are going to talk a little bit more. It's a bit more scatterbrained, but it's mainly focused on theming. We'll see how long we can keep up the episode, each episode having a specific thing that all of the books and stories that I talk about have in common. I feel like eventually that's going to run out, and I'm just going to be talking about books that I enjoy or didn't enjoy, depending on what you guys tell me to talk about. But today, I'm actually really excited to talk about what we have today. We're going to do this a little bit differently than last time. We're still going to have a similar format, but we're going to switch it up a little bit. We are going to start by talking about the audiobook that I wanted to talk about. Then we'll talk about the graphic novel. And then after that, we'll talk about book and adaptation kind of together. Mostly together. Yeah, mostly together. We'll have the book and adaptation together. And that is for a reason which we will talk about when we get there. So first, let me grab it here. First, we have At the Back of the North Wind by George MacDonald. Now, just to be clear, I know last episode I kind of went on a bit of a rant about how audiobooks and graphic novels should be considered books still, especially unabridged audiobooks. I feel like I might get some backlash here, but the one I listened to for the audiobook is a dramatization of At the Back of the North Wind, and I have always listened to it that way. It is a dramatization by Focus on the Family Radio Theater, which, if you haven't listened to any of their dramatizations, I would highly recommend. George MacDonald was a fantasy writer who inspired other fantasy authors such as C.S. Lewis, but this story in itself, I guess, is technically not fantasy. But the reason I decided to talk about it is, one, it is connected to theming, which is what we're going to talk about here. And two, it has fantasy elements here. You can see how George MacDonald is really starting to develop certain ideas that would later be incorporated into fantasy. There are definitely fantasy elements in here for sure, so maybe I guess you could kind of consider it that if you wanted to, but I could also see the argument made because this takes place not really modern day for when this was written, in London. The main character's name is Diamond. I've listened to this dramatization I don't know how many times. This is another one of those nostalgic books that I love to go back to because I remember my first time listening to it. We went on a long road trip. If you know anything about me, you know that I love road trips. I love road trips. And my family, we live in Arizona. We were driving up all the way to Washington State to see my cousins, and there were specific stops that my mom had planned for us to stop at to either camp out, kind of not. They were like designated campsites, kind of. There were just like places where other cars were parked, and we would have a fire. And I remember at night, I would either be writing one of those terrible novels that I was working on at the time that I mentioned in the last podcast, or I was listening to At the Back of the North Wind in the tent. It was one of those two. I was listening to this a lot, and I still love it to this day. The main character, as I've said, I believe already, his name is Diamond, and he's this boy who's just kind of going through life. I'm not going to spoil the story for you because I feel like if I still spoiled it for you, it would take away some of the enjoyment of how the book ends. And the way this book ends is genius. This story is genius. The main, I guess, summary of the story, the pitch of the story. Diamond meets this character called the North Wind. She is literally a personification of the North Wind, and adventures ensue. I guess that's all I can really say about that. But there's so much more to it. A lot of this story is about the impact that people will leave, what you will do with your life while you have it. I'm trying really hard not to go into spoilers here, because spoilers for a book that's however old, I don't even know. But the story structure itself and the fantasy elements are there with the North Wind. The adventures that Diamond goes on with the North Wind, that it's in itself is the fantasy aspect of it, is North Wind. And that's another interesting part about it. The North Wind in herself is her own character, and she explains to Diamond how she works, what she does. She literally is the North Wind. And it's just so intriguing every time you learn more about it. And I would definitely recommend this dramatization. I have yet to read the actual paperback book or an unabridged version of this audiobook, so I can't say whether or not it still holds up, but I would for sure recommend this dramatization of At the Back of the North Wind. Just, I don't know, it doesn't seem very long. As far as, with all your fantasy books that you're listening to now, this is what? Hold on. Let me open this up here. I have this stuff with me here in my closet. Yeah, it's 2 discs long and 13 and 14 tracks each. This'll take no time at all. Seriously, if you just want something nice and short and sweet, then just give this a listen. It is excellent in the way it tells its story, and once it hits you at the end, you have to listen all the way to the end to understand the theming of the story, which is brilliant. And then when you go back and you re-listen to it and you catch up, you pick certain things that were always there. When stories do that, they reference things. I love it when stories do that. When they reference things that will be important later down the road, and you're like, oh, I can see you leading up to that. You writer, I don't know what to say. You writer, I can't believe you did this. But it really is fascinating and really inspiring to me how you can write a story. You really can wait until the very end of a story for it all to click, for there to be the big plot twist, because there really is no plot twist. Initially, you kind of think, oh, things are just sort of happening for no rhyme or reason. He's just going on his adventures with the North Wind. And then the ending hits you, and it hits you like a truck, at least it did when I first read it. However old I was, I think 13 years old, I want to say. So 7 years ago. About 7 years ago when I first read it. It hit me like a truck even then. And going back and seeing all the little pieces in the story that are setting up what is to come, you understand, oh, this story wasn't just about Diamond's adventures with the North Wind, albeit that is a part of it, but it's all leading to something. That is what is so genius about this story. And within that is the themes of what are you going to do with your life, how things in life affect you, how you react to how things affect you. It's very interesting. It's very intriguing. I would say, this is a hard one to recommend to specific people. Honestly, whether you love fantasy or if you don't, I would say this book is good for those of you who, if you don't like fantasy, why in the world are you listening to my podcast? But if you don't like fantasy, if you know someone who doesn't like fantasy, but they just enjoy listening to audiobooks or dramatizations, because this, again, I've only listened to the dramatization, give this to them and say, hey, listen to this, you'll enjoy it, because it's enjoyable, but once you get to the end, it's worth it. I'm telling you, it's worth it. Listen to it all the way through, and it'll blow you away. I love this. It really is a testament to great storytelling in authors who, and even that aspect was likely what inspired C.S. Lewis to write Chronicles of Narnia, because the way the story is structured, everything leading to an ending that you didn't expect, but once you go back and reread it, it makes sense. That is what is masterful, and that is what readers and writers can take away from this book. So highly recommend the dramatization by Focus on the Family Radio Theater of At the Back of the North Wind. Next up, we have, I know last week I talked about Planet Hulk, so I figured, why not just talk about World War Hulk? World War Hulk by Greg Pak and John Romita Jr. I hope I said that right. Again, not great with names. I hope I said that correctly. World War Hulk is the climax to the stuff that happens at the end of Planet Hulk. And this, I already said, I like the story of Planet Hulk more, because this story is really just Hulk's coming back to Earth and he's gonna beat the crap out of everyone. He's more angry and more powerful than he ever has been. It really is a love letter to those who love the Hulk. And I remember when I was a massive fan of the Hulk, I liked seeing other people online pit the Hulk against other superheroes, and I would always get super upset if the Hulk didn't win, because I was like, the Hulk is the strongest there is, blah, 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 blah. Whatever, I don't really care that much anymore about it, but it really is a love letter to, like, okay, he's gonna go against this person, this person, this person, this person, this person. You didn't think he could beat all these people, but he's gonna beat the crap out of them and still be ready to take on someone else, and that really is it. And again, the artwork is different from the Planet Hulk graphic novel. And while I would say I prefer the artwork from Planet Hulk, because the illustrations in that book is just, oh my goodness, it is drop dead gorgeous. It is skillful? Is that a good word for it? Masterful. It's masterful. It's amazing. I love it. Love the artwork in Planet Hulk. But the artwork in World War Hulk is still pretty good. It's still really solid. There are a lot of really nice action panels that are illustrated very well in this book. And when I talk about World War Hulk, there's a lot of side stories that are connected to World War Hulk that are technically a part of World War Hulk, like Hulk versus the X-Men and stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the core graphic novel, the main issues that were the primary issues that were collected to make World War Hulk that it is here. But under all of that, there are several themes that are pointed out here. Again, there is the idea of the Hulk being his own character, which he is, but he also is kind of back to the point where he's just a mass of destruction and rage. That's kind of the point of this story. And really the point of the end of Planet Hulk 2 is that it reverts him back to it. The difference is, unlike him just being angry for no reason, like in many of his stories, because he's the Hulk and he's always angry, Planet Hulk is the story that gives him a reason for being angry. He has a motive here. And this story, I feel, really wrestles with what is it that makes you the bad guy, the antagonist in a story. Is it your own decisions, or is it the world around you? Because sometimes it feels like decisions are made for you, and sometimes you get into events that you can't really control. But what this book tries to explain, at least this is what I got out of it, is at the end it talks about a lot of things, most things come down to what you choose. And, there is the argument of, oh, well, this and this happened to me, and this happened to me, which sucks. Granted, there are things in life that you simply cannot control. It's just a fact. You will go through life and experience things that you cannot control. What you can control is your attitude towards those things, and that is hard. And it's kind of interesting, underneath all of the action and awesome butt kicking that is in World War Hulk, that is really the theme that is taken away. I would say, yeah, because while the character arc of the Hulk is really set in stone, unlike in Planet Hulk, where the story really is character based around the Hulk, this one's basically the arc of the Hulk has already been established. His character has been established, so now let's focus more on the story aspect. Him just going and kicking the tar out of these fools. And that's what they do. And they execute it very well. Because of the foundations that Planet Hulk set, you feel for the Hulk, and you even feel for some of these other characters, but mainly for the Hulk. You feel for him, dude. You feel for him. And under that is this outlying theme about choices versus events that I just find really compelling. And again, I could definitely see people making the argument that World War Hulk is better than Planet Hulk just because they like to see Hulk smashing things. And the difference between this and other issues of Hulk versus other people is it's not really just the Hulk doing his thing and then he gets mad because of some misunderstanding. No, this is actually, there is a reason for why the Hulk is doing things and why he's angry. He's an intelligent character in this story, just like he was in Planet Hulk. He's an intelligent character, but he's pissed, which makes it more interesting than him just being a mindless force of nature, which I would argue is still cool. But I can definitely see people saying, oh, World War Hulk is way better than Planet Hulk, because it really is all of the payoff that the ending of Planet Hulk sets up. But Planet Hulk really is, if you take out the end, there is a end for the arc of Planet Hulk, and then the actual ending of Planet Hulk is the lead-in cliffhanger to World War Hulk. That's really how it works. You can read Planet Hulk by itself, but if you go past that and read the actual end of Planet Hulk, then you will definitely want to read this. You'll definitely want to read World War Hulk, which I would encourage you to do so. It is a very good read. I love it. As I said, I was much more obsessed with comic books than I am now. In high school, I was known as the comic book guy. For like my freshman year in high school at church, my nickname was Comic-Con, because I always carried a comic book with me, whether it was, there were these things called Marvel Essentials, which just had black and white issues of the 60s Marvel comics that first came out, all compiled into one omnibus, and those are amazing. I might talk about those at some point, but those aren't really one focused story, so it'd be a little bit harder to do. point is, even as someone who's not as obsessed with comic books as I was, this is an excellent story. The theme around it is what I find intriguing, and all of the action, all of the fights in this book are amazing. And it does have... this book does have the feels. This book does have the feels. I get hit with the feels every time I finish it. I'm just like, man, the Hulk has just been through some crap. I feel sorry for him. I'm sorry, man. That's rough. That's rough, buddy. Yeah, it's great. I love it. I highly recommend it. Go read Planet Hulk and then come back and read World War Hulk and tell me what you think. And there are some other books that do come after World War Hulk. They're not really about the Hulk necessarily, but if you guys want me to talk about those, I will. It really comes down to what you guys want me to talk about. All right. Now we get to the main course of this episode, and that is I want to talk about a book and an adaptation. We're going to talk about How to Train Your Dragon. I love How to Train Your Dragon. And most of you out there who hear the words How to Train Your Dragon will be like, oh yeah, the movie. The movie's fantastic. Did you guys know there were books? I know several people who've watched the movies who didn't even know that the books existed. The movies are technically adaptations of books. And we'll get into that later, but... No, well, actually, we'll get into it now. Screw it. The books and movies are very different. They are vastly different. They're not even really the same story being told. Not really. They both have the main character, Hiccup, and Fishlegs is in there. In the books, Fishlegs and Hiccup are both, like, scrawny and weak, unlike Fishlegs in the movie, who's, like, this big girth of a Viking. Holy moly. But other than that, everything else is pretty much different. There are 12 books, but today we're just going to talk about the first book, because the first book is really the one that I can see inspired the first film. We're not going to talk about all 3 films. We're not going to talk about all 12 books. We're going to talk about book 1 of the How to Train Your Dragon series, which is just called How to Train Your Dragon, and we're going to talk about the first How to Train Your Dragon movie, which is another movie from my childhood that I find nostalgic, and for a while was my favorite movie. I saw it in theaters as a kid, and for my birthday was given this book after I found out that the movie was a book. I wanted it, and that's kind of shocking coming from me as a kid who didn't really care to read. I read it. It was one of the first few books that I chose to read on my own versus school or homework. I was homeschooled, so I read a lot more actual books other than textbooks, which I definitely approve of. But I have not read the other How to Train Your Dragon books. I read part of the second one when I was little and then stopped for whatever reason. I think I got scared. I'm not entirely sure if that's true, but I think I was scared of some of the things. And we'll get into that later as well. Okay, so the story of How to Train Your Dragon. The book. Hiccup is a Viking who's weaker than everyone else. Him and his best friend Fishlegs. They're both weaker than everyone else, and they are bullied by Snotlout and all of his lackeys who just kind of hate him for no reason other than he's small and he's weak and bullying, blah, blah, blah. Hiccup finds this dragon named Toothless. Now in the book, Toothless is nothing like he is in the movie. Not even close. In the movie, Toothless is this big black... He's a Night Fury. He's this big, terrifying... I keep saying force of nature, but he's a force of nature. He's this big, terrifying dragon who's like the greatest dragon of them all. This terrifying, one-of-a-kind dragon who's never been taken down, and then Hiccup happens to take it down. It's not like that in the book. In the book, Toothless is this extremely puny, weak dragon. They think it's this basic species of dragon, but they're not even sure. He just seems like this tiny dragon. And also, dragons can speak. They speak a language called... I think it's called Dragonese. I believe it's just called Dragonese. And Hiccup is the only one that can speak it. He's learned to speak Dragonese, so that's how he can speak with Hiccup. Not Hiccup. Hiccup can speak with Hiccup. Hiccup can speak with Toothless. He can speak with Toothless, and then from there, chaos ensues. And really, the climax of this book is very similar to the climax of the film. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but in that regard, this book, I can see where they took parts of the book and used them to make their own adaptation. I forgot to mention this. I'm so sorry. The books were written by Cressida Cowell. I'm pretty sure I've said that right because I've been watching some of her interviews online, and if you haven't, I would definitely recommend that you do. Her interviews are very interesting. I quite like her personality, and she seems to know what she's doing as far as writing goes. So the story in itself really is, as far as theming goes, is the same for both the books, at least this book, and the films. And I find that interesting that the stories are so vastly different. They're so different from each other, yet the theme is essentially the same. They're both coming-of-age stories. They're both about characters who really just kind of feel pathetic and don't really care much about their own well-being. They just want to fit in, they just want to be cool, and them just maturing as human beings. And I feel like we can all relate to that on some level. You know, a boy becoming a man, a girl becoming a woman. It's a pretty timeless theme to have in your stories, and this book pulls it off well, and so does the movie. We'll move into the movies now just for a little bit. The movie is fantastic. The animation in this film, I'm just talking about the first one because I know it gets better, which is hard to say because the first one's animation is already pretty sweet. Oh my gosh. Oh, the animation is so good. And the voice acting is incredible. It just all falls into place. If you're looking for just like a classic animation, How to Train Your Dragon is like the Toy Story of DreamWorks films. That is what, because there's 3 of them. I know there's 4 Toy Story movies, but there were 3. So now this really is the Toy Story of DreamWorks films. They are masterful at telling their story. They're geniuses in their own right for taking the story, making something completely different, and yet somehow still making it amazing. Like, when has that ever happened? Give me a time when a film was adapted and purposefully made different from the original source material, and it still ended up being amazing. If I'm honest, I can't really say which one is better because it's been so long. I skimmed through the book not long before recording this, and it really jogged my memory on a lot of things, a lot of pleasant memories. I really did love this book. But I'm not sure if I can say whether or not which one was better. I guess I would probably say the movie just because it's easier for me to consume, but it's tough. The book is really well written, and here's the thing, something I need to let you guys know before I recommend this. The books are definitely for a younger audience. You can tell. This book is like a little over 200 pages, so if you read this as an adult or as a teen who reads fantasy, you could read this in a day. When I was a kid, when I was a little youngling, a little boy, I read this in a day or two, from what I remember. Which, as someone who didn't really read, that is a testament. There are illustrations in this book that the author, that Cressida Cowell, did herself, which honestly, the book in this respect, the movie has humor in it, but that's not really a point that is made in the story. The humor really is more focused up in the book. And I'm not even sure that focused up is the right way of saying it, because there's definitely humor in the movie, and it makes you laugh, and I definitely enjoy the humor in the films, but you can tell that the books are really children's comedy fantasy. That is the direction that the author took with this first book. And from what I've seen, I feel like, and I am really just speculating because I haven't read any of the books to come, that how do I put this? The future installments grow up with their audience. There we go. I'm a little tired right now, but I'll get through it. I apologize. The books get steadily bigger. Like I said, the first one is a little over 200. Book 12, there are 12 books, which is crazy to me. Book 12 is over 400 pages, which is more of a fantasy book size. So my assumption is that as the books go along, they slowly start to morph into its fantasy, maybe even epic fantasy. I don't know. I'm actually more intrigued to read them than I initially thought. So if you guys want me to read more of those fantasy, of those How to Train Your Dragon books, I will do it. And even if you don't, I might just do it anyway after I finish reading some other books that I have planned to do. But the main difference, like I said, the book and the film really differ in a lot of ways, but both are fantastic at telling this coming-of-age story of this person growing into their own skin through the people that Hiccup meets, which is Toothless, both versions of Toothless. That core piece of the story is very present in both stories, in both book and film, which is astounding because the stories are vastly different, as I already said. And going to the author, Cressida Cowell, I am just very happy to see that she appreciates the direction that the films took, because I could see her, honestly, being upset with that the films and movies are different. I could see any author being upset with that, but again, it goes back to how a studio treats the author and their work, if it's treated with respect. And I would say that the work is treated with respect in the films, but they just took it in a different direction. For one, there are 3 films, and the films have a conclusive ending, and the conclusive ending of the How to Train Your Dragon books doesn't come until book 12. But at the same time, she sees the beauty in what the films have done. She's in interviews, again, I recommend going and watching her interviews. She openly talks about how she loves what they've done with the films, and I think I can piece together why that is. I can't really speak for her. But the theme that is important in these books and in the films is the Hiccup's relationship with Toothless. Hiccup as a person changes because of his interactions with Toothless. Toothless is the key to him growing not just comfortable in his own skin, but eventually growing into a man, into someone who can lead his people, someone who other people can look up to as an example. He becomes that because of Hiccup, because of that connection. Hiccup's not a human, but he's his own character in his own right, and that human connection that is there, it's not a human and a pet. It really isn't. It's a character with a character, a person with a person, as a human or a human would be. Human connection is really important, and the book and the film both emphasize that people change based on who they encounter in life. And sometimes we don't get to choose who we encounter, but we do get to choose who we spend more time with. And both of these separate stories, because really you should consider them separate, they both emphasize the positive outcomes of being around a positive influence. Too often I see, and I'm speaking for myself as much as I am to you, I don't mean to come off as overly preachy. I know I said that in the last podcast, but I really don't mean to sound like it, because I am also a human being who does crap. So too often when we hang out with people, especially those who others have said are a negative influence, because oftentimes we ignore the signs. But when other people point it out, we say, oh, well, I can change them. I can be the positive influence in their life. And sometimes that is the case. But oftentimes it isn't. If you hang out with someone who you need someone else to tell you that they are a negative influence, and even still you're ignoring the signs, it means it's time to step back and look at what kind of an influence they are having on your own life. And the How to Train Your Dragon book, this children's fantasy comedy book, and this children's animation have told this theme in such a subtle way, even through the coming of age stuff, that positive human connection with other people is important. It really is. It is key to our lives. We're not meant to walk this life alone. We're really not. We are meant to walk this world with other people beside us. Even if you look at something like the Bible, iron sharpens iron. You are meant to walk this world with other people and with positive influences as well. That aspect is very important in our own lives, and that is a big takeaway from these books and from the movie. I keep saying books as if I've read them all. I've really only read one. If you guys want me to check out the other ones, I'm very intrigued by them. Just sitting here and talking about them has made me more so want to go and read the other books. Book 2 is called How to Be a Pirate. And for some reason I was scared of that book while I was reading it, but to be honest, when I was a kid I was afraid of everything, and I might divulge that at a later date, but not for now. Highly recommend to anyone who loves movies or animation. If you love animation, check out How to Train Your Dragon, the movie. If you want a quick read, just a quick read that'll take no time at all, I got this book for it. I got you. How to Train Your Dragon by Cressida Cowell. Pick it up, read it, love it, enjoy it. Tell me what you think. All right, to end this off, I'm going to just update you guys a little bit on how my writing has been going. I'm in the process of, I got my manuscript back from my editor from the developmental edit. So now I am going through the manuscript, seeing what I'm going to change and what I'm going to keep before I send it in for the copy edit. And I am quite a ways through. I was going at a pretty quick pace at the beginning of December when I got it back. But then this last week and a half, I hadn't done any revising because I was writing a short story for my dad for Christmas. And again, once that's revised, once my sister and dad are done reading it and I get feedback and I do some revising of that, I'm going to narrate that short story. So look forward to that. I'm going to post it on YouTube for free. So look forward to that. But right now, as of recording, it is the 29th of December. It's a little past midnight, so it's kind of late. I guess yesterday, I started revising again. So I'm back into the pace. Hopefully I can get it done. I just finished revising chapter 11, and I believe there are 26 chapters in my novel. So I will continue to keep you guys updated. If you want me to post the prologue or some snippets of some of the story, I might do that if enough of you ask me. So yeah, I will post again the first three episodes of this podcast will be for free on YouTube, but every episode that I release will be going on to Apple Music and iTunes and possibly some other places like Spotify. We shall see. So I'll be sure to put the link to these episodes in iTunes in the description below. If you guys want to support me, go ahead and check those episodes out on iTunes. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I am at CameronIG on Instagram. Feel free to DM me. I just got an email that you guys can send in your questions for, so you can either DM me on Instagram or you can send me an email, whichever you prefer. My email is oh shoot, I forgot it. It is folktalespod@gmail.com. folktalespod@gmail.com. No space, just folktalespod@gmail.com. Feel free to email me and let me know what you guys want me to look at next. And I'm excited to hear from what you guys think. I still have not released a single episode, so I'm interested to see what you guys will say. This has been Folktales and Fantasy. My name is Cameron Michaels, and thank you guys so much for listening. Goodbye.